This is the Syma S107G helicopter, and today we're going to be changing out the gear on the front motor. These little helicopters actually have two motors in them, and each one drives one set of blades. And as you can see, when we hit the up button on the controller, gotta turn it on, and you can see only the top portion of the blades is actually engaging and the bottom ones aren't moving at all. When we look closer inside the helicopter, it's going to be kind of hard to see, but I'll try to get into the frame here. You can see the gears, and in the front you can see the metal shaft coming down from the motor, and it's difficult to see, but there's no gear on there and fallen off while we were flying one of these days. First, you're going to need to grab a small set of screwdrivers, and we're going to have to take out the two screws that hold onto the front shroud. These little helicopters are really a lot of fun, and they're not like a lot of the toy helicopters that you can find that you might buy the kids and they have a lot of trouble steering them and controlling them in flight. These are actually really easy to control. One of the real attractive things about this helicopter is it's under $20 on Amazon, so you don't really get too nervous when the kids are flying and running into the walls and being a little rough with it. What you have to look out here is there's the IR sensors in the front, and it still stays wired to that front shroud, so you have to be careful when you're removing it so you don't pull those wires right out of the helicopter. Once you get the front shroud off, you're going to see the motor, and it's going to have a little metal tab. So you're going to grab a pair of needle nose pliers and gently grab the top of the tab and bend it outward. You're going to want to be a little careful when you do this part. Make sure you're not pinching the two motor wires in your needle nose pliers so that you don't end up clipping a wire while you're trying to remove the motor. You're going to want to take your pliers and grab the side of the motor and then rock it back and forth until that motor just lets go. If you try to grab it from the top, your pliers can slip off and end up breaking one of the wires. Now that you have the motor free, you're going to have to get the appropriate gear. Now you can buy a lot of replacement parts on Amazon for these, but the one thing they're not going to have is the gears that go on the motor. I got these directly from Syma, but if you need a new motor, you're going to have to go ahead and buy the motor. The motor that for the front is actually the A motor, and it's just about $7 on Amazon. So we take the gear, and I'm holding it here with the needle nose pliers very gently. If you can just put it on with your hand, that's probably better because you can end up crushing the teeth if you use the needle nose. I use the needle nose to get it onto the shaft, and then I use my finger to just tightly push it onto where it needs to go. Now that we have the gear pressed firmly on the shaft, we're going to go ahead and place it back into the helicopter right where we pulled it out of. Make sure that all the wires are clear. I'm using the needle nose to make sure that it goes all the way down, and you're going to want to look inside the body of the helicopter to make sure that your new gear is meshing up with the drive gear that runs the blades that you're working on. Now we're going to bend that tab back down over the motor to make sure that it holds it tight. Make sure you get it all the way down, or your motor might creep upwards and it'll stop engaging with the gears and the blades will stop turning. Now we're going to carefully place the shroud back on there. Make sure that the battery's back in place in the little slot in the front. And you have to make sure that all the wires are tucked back and not being pinched where you're going to put the screws. You want to make sure that the holes line up, and those screws are really tiny. I didn't have a set of magnetic screwdrivers, but they would definitely come in handy for these little teeny screws. Now that we have everything back in place, you should be able to look inside the helicopter, and you can see that there's that brand new gear on the front shaft, and it's right where it needs to be, and when you turn the blades, it turns all the gears inside. We should be ready to give this thing a shot and see if it takes off. And that's all there is to it. We're ready for hours of more fun with the Syma S107G helicopter.